All right, here with the Italian sports guys. Bada boom.
Bada bing.
And of course, this is pandemic and a draft edition free agency as well. First of all, I just want to give a shout out to the ISG Nation. It's good to be back with you after a long hiatus, right, Kyle?
Absolutely. Nothing like doing a little bit of this to take our minds off a whole bunch of that.
That's no doubt about it. And certainly we just wish all the folks out in ISG Nation, just stay safe, whatever your timetable is, getting back to some sense of normalcy. Just make sure you take all the precautions, because when the Saints win that Super Bowl, we want the whole ISG Nation here to celebrate, right?
I don't want to have to social distance at the Lombardi parade, okay?
That's right.
Not gonna happen.
Kyle, let's do it. We'll jump into a quick segment on free agency first, and then we'll jump into we'll do a separate segment on the draft, of course, get into a little more detail. Let's start with the Saints free agency. Of course, it all starts with quarterback, and that situation got settled with, of course, both Drew Brees and Taysom Hill staying in line.
Yeah, obviously, more than anything, you wanted 9 back in the saddle. He obviously gives us our best chance to win a championship here in New Orleans, and he's won 13 games the last 2 years in the regular season. Enough said. We all know what his career has meant to the league, much less Saints fans alone. One of the all-time greats, and so glad to have him back. You lose Teddy Bridgewater, and you brought him in to have a Super Bowl-capable backup, and he did his part last year. And, we just didn't answer the bell on that fateful Sunday when it all ended against the Vikings. But other than that, great season by Teddy Bridgewater as well. And Drew was Drew when he got back in the saddle after missing 5 games. And Taysom Hill, the X factor, the guy who can do a little bit of everything for this team. You get him back, and don't get me wrong, I think allowing Bridgewater to sign with Carolina, and that was kind of written in stone. Once Drew came back, we weren't going to keep Teddy as a number 2 anymore out of respect for him. And also kind of signals that this job, when Drew does walk away, whether it be after this season or the next, this job will be there for Taysom Hill to go get. He'll be given every chance, and they may even be assuming that he is the guy. That being said, here I think he still goes in as the number 3 quarterback. So you see them bringing a veteran who can, look, you're not going to find another Teddy Bridgewater, but somebody in that mold who can run the ship if something does happen to Drew. And Taysom can still be used in his role as the X factor.
Yeah, and of course, you're right. It's kind of a veteran guy, a guy who you're not going to be expecting a long-term future of the franchise. And putting that number 1 tender on Taysom did ensure the Saints were really serious about this guy and making him the future of the franchise. Let me ask you this, though, Kyle. Sean Payton had a little slip of the lip, perhaps, when he was being interviewed by Mike Greenberg, said Drew's coming back for his last season. Now, people made a lot about that. Maybe it was just a slip. Maybe he said, I think he came back, he backtracked on it very quickly. Do you think there was anything to that? Does he know something that he's not telling us? Or that he told us inadvertently?
I went back and forth on this one, and I wasn't even sure if Drew was going to come back at all. None of us was. Now, he said when all the national outlets were in town for the national championship for college, Sean said, on the desk with ESPN, I believe, one Sunday morning, he said, look, Drew's going to be back. So, that to me was the, oh, thank goodness, moment. But when he said that, I said, okay, he's coming back. So if he says it's, for his last season, you can backtrack all you want. I do think that this will be his last year. I hope I'm wrong. Hope he plays enough to where it is another situation where we want him to come back and defend his title that he's going to win this year. So we'll see.
Some other key moves, Kyle, in free agency. Of course, we talked about a real need at wide receiver to plug in that number 2, definite number 2, not these guys that have kind of been cycling through and waiting for that guy to step up. They signed Emmanuel Sanders, a guy who had a serious injury about a couple years back, but had a big year last year, played a long season and played well. So it really gives you some experience, and a guy that runs routes well, good after the catch, and a guy who's a solid number 2 after Mike Thomas, of course.
Tremendous asset in the slot. I mean, look, the 49ers were a tremendous team this year, and they made it to the Super Bowl. And we saw them at their very best when they hung 48 to our 45, I believe it was, on us.
Yeah.
But Jimmy Garoppolo had his ups and downs as a passer, and you saw the Chiefs exploit that in the Super Bowl. Emmanuel Sanders with a guy like Drew Brees pulling the trigger, I think will have one of the best seasons he's going to have. He is a tremendous slot receiver, experience, still has the giddy up. Hasn't lost a step, and I think you'll see that with Mike Thomas on the outside commanding, the lion's share of the secondary's attention every Sunday, that Emmanuel's going to have himself quite a season.
Yeah, and you look at also another key acquisition. Saints go out and get Malcolm Jenkins. Now, here's an interesting pick. We let Von Bell get away, of course, a younger guy who's kind of on the upswing. for a guy who's more of a veteran guy, Malcolm Jenkins, a guy who Sean Payton has said in the past he regretted letting him get away. He's had a lot of success with the Eagles after leaving the Saints. That tells me what it tells me is there was something lacking in terms of leadership on that back end, and I think that's what he's looking for, just in terms of what he's looking to add to this defense.
I agree 100%, Craig. Malcolm Jenkins is a special kind of dude.
Yeah.
Okay. And you go back to the clip that we passed amongst ourselves, the ISG board members with
we were bored that day.
Yeah, right. We were bored that day with him running down the Tampa Bay wide receiver years ago.
Yeah.
I think Freeman was the quarterback for the Bucs at the time, and Marvin Freeman, I believe. And Jenkins runs the receiver down. Play's gone. Guy's going to score. He runs him down at the 3-yard line. Saints end up holding him. Bucs go for it on 4th down. Saints turn around, come back and win that game.
Yeah.
That to me is everything Malcolm Jenkins has been in a nutshell in his career. He's a leader. He's a smart guy, but more than anything, an incredible competitor. And he's a winner. And I think we needed somebody back there. Now you add a player who was on the Super Bowl roster here, a guy on the defensive side of the ball that was here when we won it all. And I think that's going to pay huge dividends to those younger guys in that secondary. He's a guy who can make the big play, but he's also a guy who's going to put people in the right spot, and a guy who can tell the other players, hey, we've seen this before. Let's buckle down. We can do this. Because I don't know if that guy was there on the back end last year.
Yeah, and you look at in terms of the other moves the Saints made, mostly in terms of shoring up the existing guys we had. The big moves there, Onyemata on defense and Andrews Pete on offense. And, Pete's a guy who's the ISG Nation, the Saints, the Who Dat Nation, have been a little bit, lukewarm on just because he hasn't really lived up to the hype of that draft pick we gave up for him. But, I was talking to one of our ISG correspondents, James Camp, an offensive line coach out with the San Diego Chargers, and he said he was really fired up about this.
Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah. He said he was really impressed by this line. He said, don't underestimate the importance of bringing back all 5 guys in that continuity. And that's a great point. Continuity on an offensive line. A lot of times you talk about, can we upgrade this piece or that piece, but you got the same guys coming back. That does pay some dividends.
Absolutely. And look, I had the same discussion with them saying, I think we overpaid the guy. I'm not saying his market wasn't that. Pete's agent was going to market him as a guard who can swing out and play tackle in a pinch, and that helps the roster. And he is graded out very high, went to the Pro Bowl. Look, everybody goes to the Pro Bowl nowadays. I don't know quite the honor it used to be, but I was a 3rd-string replacement for fullbacks.
I was about to say that. Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, and it just looks like, to Saints fans, and I look, partially rightfully so, kind of break it down a little bit for you here. Very underwhelming performance, particularly in a game where not a whole lot of people, inside the box played well. We got handled by the Vikings at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. We really did. And one of the breakdowns by former Saint Steve Court, who's still involved here with the local media, was that, look, you always want to be attacking when you're an offensive lineman. The pass blocking thing, it's an incredible skill to have, but a lineman gets into his rhythm, gets into his feel when he is pushing the other guy down the field and you're running the ball. It's a complete, almost emotional takeover of the game. You're kind of Jedi minding the defense that, hey, now we can do anything we want to you.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, we'll throw it if we have to. We went pass heavy. We went pass first in that game, and he got torn apart. He had a really bad game, but he's a really good player. And again, I think this signifies, if you take it a step further, Sean Payton. I don't think Sean Payton plans on throwing the ball 32 times a game next season and bringing this guy back. If that was the case, he would let him walk and brought in a guy who's an okay run blocker and excels at pass protection.
Yeah.
He's this run blocking.
Yeah.
And I think that signifies something else, that this team is going to realize that we probably gave up on a run in a couple of games, San Francisco being one of them, where we shouldn't have. And I think Sean Payton has solidified to himself that this is where he's going to go with this, that we're going to be a run-first team with an all-time great who can still chunk it behind center, but our strength is going to be running the football. And that's where Pete will get a chance to show that he's worth the contract he got.
Yeah, we've had a nice rotation of backs the last few years with Kamara and, prior to that, Mark Ingram, and now, of course, with Latavius Murray. But don't underestimate the importance of that. Again, Andres Pete's contribution to that running game the last several years. Elsewhere, Kyle, in free agency again, we re-signed some guys. We got our long snapper back. We got Justin Hardy back, who is a big special teams guy. DJ Swearinger, a guy we picked up late last year, will come back. PJ Williams, defensive back. and Cam Tom, who again has some versatility as a backup on that offensive line.
Yeah, one of the guys that we never saw a lot of last year, and he's going to be primarily a special teams player this year, in DJ Swearinger. But make no mistake about it, his reputation throughout his career has been that of a big hitter. And I don't know if we really had a lot of big hitters back there last year at the safety spot. Marcus Williams, if he got his hands on you, could put you down. But he missed a lot of tackles. He did. I don't want to celebrate it because it makes me sick. But there were times when we said, geez, if the other guy didn't happen to be following the play and make the tackle 5 yards downfield, that guy goes all the way.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see Swearinger in games when we're playing somebody that's run heavy. Let's say we play the Titans or a team like that really wants to run the ball down your throat. You're going to see DJ Swearinger with a lot of snaps. So that's something in addition to being a special teamer that he brings to Sunday afternoons. But I like all the signings. The one thing that I think you saw from other organizations around the league who have been successful over the last decade, Green Bay Packers, one of them. Very few players they bring in from the outside. Patriots, they'll take a flyer on Antonio Brown types. They'll make a trade here and there for the back-end players. But they primarily want to re-sign their guys, the dominant team. So I think Sean Payton is the same way. You keep that continuity, especially now. Nobody saw what the current situation with the pandemic in this country coming. But, boy, how important is continuity now when you can't really do anything as a team?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And Dwayne Washington, another guy we signed, another running back who's shown that he can play a little bit. But, again, a special teams guy who said he liked the culture here more than anything.
Yeah.
And that's what got him to stay. So,
yeah, nice to hear that this culture is something that is attracting, folks to this team, of course. It will, of course, be incumbent upon us to stay healthy. When you bring in a couple of older free agents, like I mentioned, Emmanuel Sanders with an injury, a little bit of an injury in the past, and 33 years old, Malcolm Jenkins on the tail end of his career. So hopefully those guys stay healthy.
No, great point, Craig. You have to figure that towards the end of the year, a little bit, we used Deontay Harris on the offensive side of the ball. It was a Pro Bowl, first-team All-Pro return guy, but we also used him in some of the offensive sets at a big catch against the Vikings on one of the touchdown drives. So I think you can see him being groomed as another slot receiver, and if something does happen to Sanders, there's a guy who can at least provide some electricity when he gets his hands on the ball a yard after the catch guy. Got a lot to learn as a receiver, I'm sure, but again, hopefully he's doing his homework on his own right now. So no, you don't. That's a great point about these guys with a lot of that are getting a little long in the tooth. Can they last 16, 19 games or whatever it is? But that's kind of what you prepare for. You get your backups ready to play just in case.
Yeah. All right, Kyle. Any other thoughts on free agency? Of course, we'll come back and do another segment on the draft. Any other wrap-up thoughts on free agency? Of course, I mentioned we lose Von Bell, so that is a loss of a younger player, kind of up and coming.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate loss too, because this is a guy that everybody was really. Every week you seem to get a little higher and higher on this guy. He seemed to do something every week that showed that he was growing as a player. I think he really maybe he or his agent overestimated what he was going to get, because when he hit the open market, he ended up signing for what I believe was less than the Saints were offering him to go to Cincinnati of all places. So, but then again, it also opened the spot for Malcolm Jenkins to come back.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a very important addition to the leadership council on that football team.
Yeah. All right, folks, we'll take a brief break. We'll come back to segment 2 again. We'll talk about NFL draft. A lot of excitement both for the Saints, a different format with these guys all spread out, and, of course, a big night, of course, we anticipate for the LSU Tigers. We are
the Italian Sports Guys.
Bada boom.
Bada bing.